Now, Labor are hoping to hold on to power by lowering the voting age. It's estimated they could secure 500,000 more votes at the next election if 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to vote. What do you make of this plan, Douglas? Some argue the voting age should be lifted, but should a 16-year-old, 17-year-old who can't even buy cigarettes, they can't buy alcohol, they can't get married, should they be able to vote?
No, absolutely not. It's pure, as you say, once again, it's pure politicking. The Labour Party is doing this for two reasons. One is that they think the optics of it will make them more attractive to younger voters. And secondly, they assume that younger voters are going to be in their favour. That's not necessarily the case. There's some very interesting data showing, for instance, that younger voters disproportionately by population are likely to vote for Reform UK, Nigel Farage's party. That would be quite a funny thing in the tail, wouldn't it, if that were to happen? But as you mentioned, Rita, it's obviously the case that if you can't, you're not deemed to be of an age to buy cigarettes, to buy alcohol, to be able to marry. Why should you have the vote? By the way, it was very interesting in the past week. At least two Labour MPs I know, including people in the government, didn't seem to realise when interviewed on air that you're not allowed to marry in the UK at 16. So they don't even know the laws as they exist, even as they try to introduce new laws like this.
Now let's go to the US, and President Donald Trump looks like he's going to be pulling the US out of UNESCO. That's the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation. This decision comes after a 90-day review. And Douglas, the organisation was deemed to be anti-American, anti-Israel and pro-DEI. Three things that the Trump administration does not like. And it's not unprecedented. President Reagan also withdrew the US from UNESCO. What do you think of this decision?
Yes, I mean, the Trump administration doesn't like anti-American international bodies. And that's something which is, you would have thought normally would be sort of quite straightforward, quite obvious, not controversial. But there are so many people, sadly, who seem to think that any organization with UN in the title must be angels, effectively. That isn't the case. I mean, there's a fundamental misapprehension at the root of a lot of people's worldview, which is that because something is an arm of the United Nations, it must be doing the Lord's work. And yet the problem with the United Nations now and with its entities is what it's often been in the case, as it was in President Reagan's day, that the tilt of the organization tilts against America, against the Western democracies, because of the predominance of unfree, undemocratic, and tyrannical countries within the organization. And, I don't mind if people want to pretend that the United Nations is the world's parliament. If they want to imagine that, that's one thing. But to imagine as a result that it is what it says it is, and that its entities are what they claim to be, is just a grotesque category error. UNESCO, like so many organizations, UNRWA, the UN Human Rights Council, these are not bodies that represent or further the interests of the American taxpayer, the American voter, and often work directly against them. So why exactly should the American taxpayer be funding them?
It's a very good question. It's one I'd be posing to our government right here in Australia. Israel and Syria, we know they're resuming dialogue on security matters in the wake of deadly sectarian clashes. We're seeing, just Douglas, horrific acts of brutality, footage that I can't play, the Druze population being targeted, and this footage is simply too graphic, too sickening to play. What can be done to help this community, Douglas, and other religious minorities in Syria?
It's absolutely appalling what's been going on in recent days in Syria. Noticeable as always, the people who've been completely silent on the matter, who obsess with anything that Israel does in the region and are totally unbothered when a jihadist or former jihadist, if you take him at his word, like the new leader of Syria, oversees a country in which this kind of ethnic strife is routine and commonplace. The Druze are a very small minority in the region, crossing in roughly in Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and are very beleaguered. And massacres like that in recent days, the only country that has done anything to actually intervene and try to stop this is the government of Israel, who is doing so partly at the behest of own Druze population. The Druze population in Israel include remarkable people, include remarkable heroes who serve in the army and so on. But Israel decided to actively step in and try to prevent some of this ethnic cleansing of the Druze of Syria. The rest of the world is just sort of sitting by, either not noticing or just talking about it. And it's very interesting that, isn't it? That once again, Israel in the region alone acts against a threat to a minority and gets no credit for it, no praise for it. And in actual fact, as we saw in an interview this week with the former head of the MI6 intelligence services in the US, who was interviewed by, I think, Christian Amanpour on CNN, don't even understand the situation in the region and don't even believe that Israel is acting in the interests of the Druze minority, and also don't seem to understand who the Druze minority are. It is a really shocking lack of comprehension at very high levels. And of course, that means that there's also a shocking lack of action.
You're right about that. Let's actually just have a quick look at that interview you referred to. And this is supposed to be an expert opining about Israel's motivations in Syria.
I don't actually believe the Israeli line that they are intervening in southern Syria in order to support the Druze, as if they have concerns about the Druze. The Druze are Arabs, they're Muslims, they are a part of the network of ethnic groups and religious groups inside Syria. What Israel is looking for, I think, is a fragmented Syria, one which is weak and divided.
It's the former head of MI6, and he doesn't know basic information, Douglas, like the Druze are not Muslims.
Yeah, that was really shocking, I have to say, really shocking. There's a sort of presumption people have that figures like this, at least know what they're talking about. Yes, I mean, he didn't. The Druze, among other things, are not Muslims by any means, and it's just and that lack of knowledge, I suppose, leads to the follow-on thing. He believes that the Israelis, who will include Druze in their own army, would not be acting legitimately in defense of the Druze minority. As for the idea that Israel wants a fractured Syria, I mean, this is just pure projection or something like that by the former head of MI6. They don't. Israel would like to live, I assume, beside a peaceful Syria that was well governed, that had peace accords with Israel, part of the Abraham Accords, and so a normalization. They don't want an endless war zone next door to them. Who would? We've seen what that means in recent years. We've seen what it means foreign proxies in Syria firing into Israel and so on. Of course. No, I mean, there's just, I've said to you often, Rita, there's this feeling in recent years that the adults have left the room. And that's still true. It's also the case many of the people who are meant to be adults, who are still in the room, turn out not to be fit for purpose.
Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time tonight.
It's a great pleasure.